Hey. Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The NFL Show is brought to you by Replenishing Care and Technologies. Check them out at rcandt.com. I am your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome my co-host, NFL beat writer and Pittsburgh Steeler fan extraordinaire, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
All right. Today, we're going to talk about last night's Monday night football games and Sam's first of the year, week one NFL quarterback rankings. So we'll pick that apart here in a minute. But let's start off with last night's Monday night games where the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the New York Giants. And with a healed up elbow, Ben Roethlisberger returned. The offense was better with him. It was hardly the Roethlisberger of old, though, Sam. It looked early at least like he was anxious, but he's still better than the Duck.
Well, yeah, he's still better. He's still much better than Devlin Hodges or Mason Rudolph. But you're right. I mean, he was missing throws. He threw one high at one point over Eric Ebron's head. He missed a lot of short throws, too. People forgot he missed a lot of running backs going out into the flat. He just overthrew him. Some of the balls were wobbling in the air. It looked really bad at halftime. And he came out in the second half. It was much better, I think, in the second half than the first half. But he looked old. He really looked old. And I think I'm lowering my expectations for Steelers based on what I saw last night.
Now, James Conner was injured. Benny Snell filled in. 19 carries, 113 yards. I think Benny Snell's the guy there. I don't think it's James Conner, even if he's healthy.
Yeah, at this point, I think you have to move on from James Conner because they were trying to run the ball heavily during the very first quarter, and it just wasn't working. James Conner had, 6 carries for 9 yards? It wasn't working, and it hasn't worked in a year and a half. So at this point, there's no problem putting Benny Snell in. You can only get better at putting Benny Snell in and just leaving James Conner on the bench at this point. I love James Conner as a guy. I love his story and everything he's done for Pittsburgh. But at the same point, he's no longer the starting running back. It has to be Benny Snell.
Yeah, and Juju Smith-Schuster looked more like the Juju of 2018 than he did his forgettable 2019. 6 catches for 69 yards, two touchdowns. So Juju looks like he's back to where he was 2 years ago. That may just be because Big Ben's back, though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Big Ben has a tendency to do these kind of things. I've been saying this all summer. I wasn't so worried about the receiving options because Big Ben has a tendency to connect with these guys. He's built a good rapport with Juju Smith-Schuster over the years. I think Juju will have a bounce-back year because of Big Ben. And we'll see if he can actually continue that on next year or not. But at this point, I think Big Ben's going to kind of lift all the boats for Pittsburgh's wide receivers.
Yeah, and I actually think when we looked at the Giants, I thought what you had with the new coach, Joe Judge, I think you had a team that played hard the entire game. I think the defense is significantly better than what it was last year. And I think new linebacker Blake Martinez, who tallied a game-high 12 tackles. Leonard Williams got plenty of pressure. And the Giants didn't really give anything away. The Steelers had to earn it. And I think if the offense in New York can gain some consistency, I mean, with the NFC East and kind of the mess it looks to be in right now, I don't think we can completely count the Giants out and maybe getting 6-7 wins, which might win that division.
No, you're right. I mean, I think the Giants have an underrated defensive line. You talked about Leonard Williams already. How about Dexter Lawrence? He was all over the field for them last night. A Clemson alum there. You got Dalvin Tomlinson, who was pretty good. And B.J. Hill's one of their backups in the interior defensive line. They've got good defensive front right now. The issue, of course, is just the consistency for them. You mentioned the offense. How about Saquon Barkley? 15 carries for 6 yards. Got completely shut down by Pittsburgh's defense.
Yeah, I think the offensive line's still an issue there. I think one big signing, everybody talks about how the Chiefs kept their entire Super Bowl team together, but they did release punter Dustin Colquitt, who last night debuted for the Steelers, and he is still one of the best punters in the league. He averaged 46 yards on 4 punts with a long of 59. And the thing about that, a lot of people say, well, he's just a punter. But with a team that has as good a defense as Pittsburgh has, and the offense will be improved, I'm actually the opposite of you. I think now the Steelers, to me, are more likely a playoff team than what they were before, because when you look at the defense and you throw a punter like that with the defense, if Big Ben stays healthy, I think the Steelers could win 10 games.
Well, I think you remember with Colquitt, it wasn't because he was skilled, he was cut, or his age. It was because of the money. They just financially could not afford to keep paying him, and they had more important pieces they wanted to sign. So that's why Colquitt was cut in the first place. And I'll say this. Watching Pittsburgh's defense last night, I felt like I was watching, for the majority of the night, the best defense in the NFL.
Yeah, but you're just thinking it because you're watching as a Pittsburgh Steeler fan. But I I think I've actually said that before, so I really can't give you any crap about it. And I really think the Steelers are a contender from what I saw last night, because I really think Big Ben, he hadn't really played in about a year. I think, especially when you're missing backside of the backfield, a lot of that's just anxious. He's trying to force things. And once he relaxes, I don't think he's got a ton of weapons around him. But if Benny Snell can give you 100 yards a game, you know Big Ben's going to play well and throw you 1 or 2 touchdown passes a game. And with the special teams and the defense, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are there. I think they're a team that could win a game in the playoffs.
And the big thing that didn't happen last night was there were no turnovers by Ben Roethlisberger. That's the big issue for him. Because he's the kind of guy who he can get hot, certainly, and throw a bunch of touchdowns. But he's also a kind of hit-and-miss player where there'll be games where he goes out there and throws 2 interceptions. You can't have that if you're going to be a competitive playoff caliber team.
All right, let's switch to the Tennessee Titans, who beat the Denver Broncos 16-14. I think this is a game when we talked yesterday about how preseason games weren't needed. If I would have just saw this game, I would say preseason games are needed, because the offenses, I think, were both, what's the word for it, bumbling. I think the defenses were great, but that may have just been because you had 2 offenses, kind of falling all over themselves. And this was a game I think the Titans really controlled, even though the score was 16-14. And the culprit there, I think, was Steven Gostkowski.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they just had the kicking had just been even average. They would have won that game pretty handedly. But I think the Broncos, like you said, the Broncos were close all the time, but never felt like they were really in the game. And honestly, both games last night, they could have used preseason. I think both teams could have used it a little bit, because they both kind of looked a little bit off. And Tennessee ends up winning the game behind, of course, behind Derrick Henry, but also Ryan Tannehill being very consistent. It's been a combination of him being very efficient, not turning the ball over, and Derrick Henry controlling the clock that's allowed Tennessee to win so many games over the past year.
Yeah, and you had Tannehill threw the ball 40 times last night, but Derrick Henry, 31 carries, 116 yards. I think the Broncos, you still got Drew Lock, who you got to worry about. And the other problem with the Broncos, to me, is the offensive line.
Yeah, the offensive line is pretty young and inexperienced. I don't think the Titans actually sacked Lock the other night. But at the same point, it's impact for the running game. They've got 2 or 3 new starters on that Denver line, and one of them's a rookie. So they're going to have some problems. I think, like we've talked about this in the past, the offensive line is where you have to build from to begin with. So it's going to take a little while for that unit to adjust to the NFL.
Yeah, and when I look at this, I think you're way off on the Broncos being a playoff team, Sam.
And when I look at it after week 1, I would have to agree with you at this point, because it doesn't look –
if they had a quarterback, I could see it. But they've got a lot of young guys, including a young quarterback, which is going to make everything more difficult. And when I look at the Tennessee Titans, just the consistency of that defense, and if Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill not turning the ball over. I know I was big on the Colts, and I'm not changing that just because of the one game in Jacksonville, but I will change it because of the way the Colts played the game in Jacksonville. And I don't mean how well they played or anything else. It's just the fact that they threw the ball 40-some times. And Phillip Rivers is going to give you at least 2 or 3 turnovers when you do that. I think Tennessee's the best bet to actually win the AFC South now, just from what I've saw and the style of play that 2 teams are going to employ.
Well, isn't that part of a coaching aspect, That's Frank Reich not recognizing what he has in the backfield, and instead of trying to make Phillip Rivers throw the ball 47 times versus what Mike Vrabel's doing, where they're building up a strong defense and then turning the ball with Derrick Henry, giving him 30-something carries a game.
All right, Sam, let's go ahead and let's transition to your NFL quarterback power rankings, which you can find on thegruelingtruth.com. Number 1, I don't see how anybody can dispute your number 1, which is Russell Wilson. I mean, he completed almost 90% of his passes. It is not like it was Gardner Minshew, 19 for 20. This was 31 for 35, and he accounted for 4 of Seattle's 5 touchdowns. And I don't see how to me, I've said it for the last year. I've caught a lot of hell from Patrick Mahomes fans and Lamar Jackson fans. There's nobody better than Russell Wilson right now in the NFL.
Well, we've mentioned in the past, I think Russell Wilson's the most complete quarterback, not just because of his mobility, but also because what he brings to your table at throwing those mid-level to short-level passes. He's phenomenal at those. Those are ones that Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson have a tendency to miss, and even deep passes. Russell Wilson's the best deep ball passer in the NFL, and he never gets credit for it.
All right, real quick, we got a question. What do you guys think about James Conner and his situation, Sam?
As I mentioned, James Conner is beloved in Pittsburgh, but at the same point, I think you got to recognize he's going to be a free agent next offseason. Pittsburgh is not going to bring him back, especially the way things are going right now. It would take a total turnaround for James Conner to be in Pittsburgh next season. just because he has not been a starting caliber running back since 2018. He just hasn't been. And part of that's the offensive line, but it's also part of it's James Conner.
All right, numbers 2, 3, and 4 in your quarterback power rankings. Aaron Rodgers at number 2, Patrick Mahomes at number 3, Lamar Jackson at number 4. I think you could actually probably put these three guys in about any order, and it would work.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I originally my first draft, I had Lamar Jackson at 3, Patrick Mahomes at 4. I just kind of switched it there at the end, but really, it's these top 4 guys, in my opinion, have to be the top 4 in the league right now because they went out there 3 touchdowns at least for all of them. Fairly accurate, and their teams won the game pretty convincingly.
Yeah, and all 3 of them are like 75, 80% completion percentage. Actually, I may, even though I'm not a huge Lamar Jackson fan, I may go with him at number 2, just because I think the Browns were probably better than the other 2 teams that lost to those teams. We look at number 5, Drew Brees. The thing about Brees is he was efficient, didn't have to throw the ball a lot, and really that's what I thought the Colts would do with Phillip Rivers, who's an older quarterback. So you got Drew Brees at 5. You got Kyler Murray at number 6, which I think is a stretch, Sam.
I think it's a little bit of a stretch too because he shot up, 11 spots, 9 spots, which really isn't my thing. I usually don't raise and lower players that much in 1 week. But at the same point, there was a lot of questionable quarterback play from the guys who were lower down. Tom Brady fell off, obviously. Deshaun Watson had a little bit of a struggle. Even guys like Matt Stafford and Kirk Cousins, who I expected to do better, didn't quite live up to my level of expectations. Meanwhile, Kyler Murray goes out there, basically one-handedly beats the San Francisco 49ers. He was the best running player for the Arizona Cardinals, so I had to give him props for that. I think he'll fall back closer to number 10 next week, but for now, I think rising up towards 6, 7 is probably a reasonable spot.
All right, number 7, you got Deshaun Watson, who, he's got to do everything on his own, but I think he belongs there. Number 8, Matt Ryan. Number 9, Tom Brady. Yeah, please explain those to me.
All right, well, Matt Ryan is carrying, again, the bulk of the load for Atlanta, 450 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I think he's going to have a bounce-back season to what he did last year, but I can understand if you're a little skeptical because the Falcons were never really in that game against Seattle. And Brady at number 9.
I'm more skeptical about Brady at number 9.
Yeah. I held him at number 9 because I didn't want to drop him too low just based on 1 week. But obviously, we mentioned this the other day. He looked old. He did not look like Tom Brady. And maybe they'll switch around. Maybe they'll fix it in week 2. But after 1 week, he did not look good. If he had another week matching this one, he'd probably be towards the 15 or 16 spot. I just didn't want to drop him too much off of 1 game.
All right, number 10, Matthew Stafford. That's basically a DeAndre Swift drop pass away from probably being number 5 or 6 on this list, isn't he?
Yeah, pretty much. Really, it was the one play that changed that. I think I could have him up at number 7 or number 6 potentially, but it's because you got 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and you lose the game to the Chicago Bears. Now, was that all Matt Stafford's fault? Certainly not. But at the same point, you lose the game to the Chicago Bears and Mitch Trubisky. That's got to hurt.
All right, number 11, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a guy who was 19 for 25, 259 yards. The thing that stood out to me was in the first half, I think he threw the ball like 6 or 7 times. So I think Kirk Cousins actually deserves to be a little bit higher on this list than number 11. I thought he played well. I thought the problem was it's a Mike Zimmer team that wants to run the ball, and I think that they did that too much. And by the time they get to the point where they're letting him throw the ball, it's too late. They're too far behind. But I thought Cousins showed that if Minnesota would just take the reins off and let him throw the ball, and why wouldn't you when you're paying a guy this much money, Sam?
But yeah, it wasn't like his contract is so much guaranteed money. I don't know why you would let him go out there and do what he does. He should throw the ball. Look at all the guys above him. Brady had 36 attempts. Stafford had 42. Matt Ryan had 54. Deshaun Watson had 32. And Kirk Cousins only has 25. That doesn't make a lot of sense. You have to have at least 30 pass attempts for Kirk. And like you said, I guess when you're playing Aaron Rodgers, who was on fire, you need to be throwing the ball to score touchdowns and stay in a competitive game. This was not a Kirk Cousins problem. This was a coaching problem.
All right, number 12, Ryan Tannehill. I think you've got him too low, too. 29 for 43, 249, 2 touchdowns. Titans would have won easily if Gostkowski could make some field goal attempts. But Tannehill was efficient, and I don't know how a Matt Ryan or a Matt Stafford or a Tom Brady or a Deshaun Watson even are above him right here, Sam.
I'm lower on Ryan Tannehill than you are. I think we've seen this throughout my quarterback power rankings in the past. I don't think he's as big of a key to the Tennessee Titans as someone like Derrick Henry. And also, I don't think he's going to be that good of a quarterback this year. I just don't think he's going to be able to be consistent. And so I think part of my bias is sneaking in here a little bit. But I don't think he's going to be.
Remember this, though. The last 2 times Ryan Tannehill was healthy pretty much for most of his seasons, he took the Dolphins to the playoffs, and he took the Titans to, the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, but he set a lot of career highs last year. I don't think he's going to be able to match that kind of production.
All right. Well, he's starting off like he might be able to. Number 13, Dak Prescott, 25 for 39, 1 touchdown, 30 rushing yards, 266 yards. What's your take here? My biggest problem with him in this game was he didn't make the big throws, and you got it in your article. They only converted 3 of their 12 third down attempts for first downs. So I don't know. Dak, I think you've got him right about the right spot, though.
Yeah, I think the next 2 or 3 guys are players who I think are really talented, but at the same point just kind of underachieved this week. Dak's certainly one of them because Dak's at 13 and you got Carson Wentz at 14. These are guys who were in position to win games. They should have been able to win games based on the offenses they had around them. Dak certainly, because Dallas is such a high-powered offense, but he went out there, he kind of played flat. I mean, he had decent numbers, but nothing special. He didn't lose the game, but he certainly didn't go out and win it. And it was definitely a winnable game. It was the Los Angeles Rams for crying out loud. So I certainly think Dak has to take some blame for what happened in Dallas.
All right, number 14, Carson Wentz, who was 24 for 42, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble loss. He turned the ball over 3 times, Sam, and you got him ahead of Big Ben from last night because you got Big Ben at number 15. He got sacked 8 times. I know they were missing 3 starting offensive linemen, but I think it's really a push to put him in the top half the way he played week 1.
Yeah, now I'm looking at it again. I could probably switch Carson Wentz and Ben Roethlisberger. I didn't see all of Carson Wentz's game.
You could also switch input Cam Newton, Derek Carr. Josh Allen should be way higher than what you've got him too, but that's just because you don't want to admit you're wrong.
A little bit. I'm holding, like, give me 1 week to, like, admit that I'm not wrong, and then I'll turn around and say I'm wrong next week. But for now, I'm going to hold on to that a little bit. But you're right, Carson Wentz. I just don't think Carson Wentz had much of a chance because they threw him out there like a piece of meat to the rabid dogs. The Washington football team has some of the best defensive linemen in the league right now, or has one of the best groups of defensive linemen, and he's got torn apart.
All right, Big Ben, number 15, 21 for 32, 229, 3 touchdowns. This is a case where I think the stats look much better than how he played. But I will say this, he has been out for a year. He won the game by double digits. I think he's too low here.
You see, I think he's kind of right where he belongs because, like you said, the stats look really good. If it was stat-based, I'd have him 2 or 3 spots higher up. But watching him, he did not look right for at least half that game. I think he'll get better. I think he'll be closer to 11 or 12 spot next week. But at this point, if he had to go out and play a game tomorrow, I don't know that I would really put him much higher than 15, maybe 14.
All right. I wouldn't either, but you've got people lower than him that I think should be higher. I think Cam Newton's one that should be higher than him. I'm not a huge Cam Newton fan, but 15 for 19, 155, 75 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns. He didn't turn the ball over. They win the game 21-11 over Miami. What more do you want from him?
Well, it's not that it's hard because they really kind of put the reins on him. They really didn't let him air it out. They really didn't let him take total control of the offense, which I understand because it's New England's offense and he's only been there for a short period of time. But at the same point, he wasn't fully exposed to the offense. He wasn't fully running everything I would expect him to run. So I'm kind of holding him back here because I don't think he fully showed us everything we would expect from a normal starting quarterback.
All right, number 17, Derek Carr. I think he should be a few spots higher.
I think you can make the argument as well. I think if we were doing it just purely based on the 1 week and not looking at some stuff from last season, some stuff that I expected him to perform at a level, I think you can make the argument he should be around 14 or 15. We've always said Derek Carr gets unfairly blamed for the Raiders and all their problems, which is caused by coaching in the front office. But they got to win. That's what matters. I think the Raiders could win 5 or 6 games. And most of it's going to be because of Derek Carr.
All right. This is my issue. Number 18, Josh Allen. He was 33 for 46, 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, 57 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. He lost 2 fumbles, but 33 for 46 for 312 yards. They win the game easy. He posted a passer rating of 104.6. Now, this is supposed to be a ranking for this season on who's played the best. Josh Allen should be top 10 right now. Shouldn't he?
Yeah, you can make the argument. But let me put it this way. He's playing the Jets. The Jets are a terrible team. They're one of the worst defenses in the NFL personnel-wise. Their best players are Marcus May and Quinn Williams. They really don't have any star defensive players. They don't really have any cover corners. And Josh Allen's a guy who admittedly, I pulled some of last year's stuff into these articles and these rankings when I initially drew them up. And he's a guy who I do not trust down the stretch. And I think he's going to have 1 or 2 big games. He's always going to have those, but I can't wait to see him play a real defense to see how he performs.
All right, number 19, Jimmy Garoppolo, who actually played well, I thought, except for the last drive or two. And it was kind of the same thing. He missed open receivers, made errant throws at the end. So I think Garoppolo at 19 is about right.
Yeah, at this point, I'm kind of losing a little faith in him to be a clutch quarterback because he had some very good games at times for San Francisco. But if they don't get out and get a running lead, he tends to struggle in those close games.
All right, number 20, Joe Burrow, who will be number 1 probably within the next 3 to 4 weeks. 22 for 36, 193 yards, an interception, 46 rushing yards. I'll tell you, I watched it. I didn't think he played well, but then you think he's a rookie. Maybe we expect too much from a rookie in his first game with no preseason games. It's the first snap he's taken in a real game since, the bludgeoning of your Clemson Tigers in a national championship game. I think the thing that really struck me here was the fact that when you get to the fourth quarter and the Bengals play with some tempo, he looked a lot more comfortable than the first 3 quarters where they basically treated him like he was Mark Sanchez with the New York Jets in 2010.
Yeah, I think I have expectations a little too high for Burrow. I initially put him at 14 in the preseason ranks. So I did have my expectations too high, but a lot of this rank is based on what I saw at the end of the game. I think they're going to change how I hope they better change how they use their offense next coming week because Joe Burrow's the kind of guy who will win you those clutch games. They should have won that game, and I think they will in the future as long as they make the adjustments to let Joe Burrow be Joe Burrow.
All right, here's your biggest mistake. Number 21, Gardner Minshew. Number 21. We've played 1 week in the season. Gardner Minshew completed 95% of his passes, 173 yards, 3 touchdowns, upsets a Colts team that a lot of people thought would be in the playoffs, and you got him ranked 21.
You want him higher?
Yeah, it's kind of ignorant not to. He should be top 5. That was one of the top 5 performances of Sunday, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think Gardner Minshew's up there yet. I kind of use this article like a scale. I kind of move guys up and down week to week. I don't think he's deserved to be up that high yet.
So then why do you week 1 power rankings? Because when you be ranking it off who played the best in week 1, and when you get to week 2, who played the best for the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, to some degree, but I'm also doing it a little bit based on skill, not just on performance from the 1 week. I think
how much skill does it take to go in an NFL football game and go 19 for 20 for 173 yards and 3 touchdowns and take what everybody thinks is a team that's not going to win a game and beat a team that people think are going to the playoffs, Sam?
That's probably a lot of skill. Probably more than I have as a writer, as you can tell. But
yeah, obviously.
But yeah, I think you make a good point. For me, I'm just kind of holding back on Minshew for 1 more week. Again, it's the same situation with Josh Allen. I just want to see a little more consistency before I'm putting them up in the top 10.
All right, number 22, Drew Lock. I don't know why you're in love with Drew Lock, but he didn't make any huge mistakes. But
I think you can say the same thing for most of the guys from like 22 to 25. They kind of like just meh. These are guys who are younger, have potential, but really didn't do much during their games.
Well, I think it's a stretch to put him ahead of Jared Goff just because Jared Goff won his game.
That's true, but Jared Goff also wasn't responsible for any of the scores during that game.
All right, number 24, Sam Darnold. I think we both agree Sam Darnold's a good quarterback with no help.
Yeah, he's got absolutely nothing there in New York. I think Le'Veon Bell, who again was average his best last season, got hurt, so he was out for most of the game. Jameson Crowder is his best receiver. The offensive line's a mess. I don't think he has any help whatsoever. He just got picked apart in Buffalo. And when he leaves New York, it's not going to be his fault. It's going to be the fault of the organization that didn't put a team around him.
All right, number 25, Daniel Jones. Now, Jones is a guy, if he could eliminate the turnovers, I think would be fine. And I think a lot of this issue last night, bad offensive line play, and the inability of Saquon Barkley to do anything on the ground.
Yeah, if you just eliminated those 2 interceptions, we're talking about a guy who would probably be close to the 16 to 15 range. But really, I mean, those 2 interceptions were costly. The one was at the goal line. It was a tip ball, of course, so it wasn't all his fault. It was a tip ball. Cameron Hayward picks it off, and it goes from what would have been a Giants touchdown to Pittsburgh taking the ball over. So his turnovers did have a major factor in the game and the game's outcome. I just think, like I said, the offensive line did not help him whatsoever, neither did the running game. I think Andrew Thomas got beat a couple of times last night. by Pittsburgh's
All right.
experienced defensive line.
I've got a couple issues with your list now. Number 26, Mitchell Trubisky, 20 for 36, 242, 3 touchdowns, 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, and you rank him below Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, even Joe Burrow, Jimmy Garoppolo. Come on. You've got to at some point admit you were at least a little wrong for the fourth quarter in this game and rank Mitchell Trubisky higher than 26.
Well, I was wrong for the fourth quarter, but we even said the other day, does this change our opinions on Mitchell Trubisky? And we said this the other day, and both you and I said no.
It doesn't change our opinions, but we do have to be honest with how he did play in that fourth quarter. And that fourth quarter made him significantly better than what Drew Lock did or Daniel Jones.
That's true, and he did have 104.2 passer rating for the game, I think, but again, I'm doing a little bit. It's my opinion. It's kind of like a skill-based list justified by numbers.
It's fine to have your opinion. I'm just going to pick your opinion apart every time I can. Mitchell Trubisky at 26 is a joke. Now, it's not a joke if we just ranked them off their careers so far, but we're not. It's week 1, Mitchell Trubisky did well. Week 2, Mitchell Trubisky will probably do well because they've got an easy home game. And then after that, we'll see where Mitchell Trubisky falls, but I'm guessing he'll fall somewhere between 20 and 26.
Probably. That's probably a good range for him at this point.
All right, 27, Teddy Bridgewater. I think that's a bad ranking. I don't see how you can have Teddy Bridgewater below Drew Lock. And if you say that you're going to compare what they've done in the past, I do remember Teddy taking the Vikings to the playoffs and last year going 5-1 with the Saints. So this is not like it's a one-off good game thing. He wasn't spectacular, but he played well.
I think he's just a little bit limited as a quarterback, personally. I think he has always been a kind of guy who's gone out there. He's got some wins. I'm not saying he's not a bad quarterback.
Drew Lock is limited as a quarterback. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is limited as a quarterback. I think Jared Goff's limited as a quarterback. But the thing about Teddy Bridgewater is he wins football games.
That's true, but he didn't win the football game they played yesterday.
Yeah, but they scored 30 points. I didn't think the Panthers would score 30 points in the first 3 games.
I think they would score 30 points all season. I'll admit that. I thought the Panthers
offense was better. He got Christian McCaffrey, so he'll score like 16 touchdowns. That's all the points they'll score.
Pretty much. It's a one-man show. I thought it'd be a one-man show. Bridgewater came out and played better than I expected. I'll admit that.
All right, Phillip Rivers, number 28. The stats look good until you get to the end of the stat line with the 2 interceptions.
And this has been a guy who's always put up numbers. Even last year with the Chargers, he put up good passing yardage numbers, but then you look at the interceptions to touchdown ratio, it's terrible. And really, it was a bad coaching job in Indianapolis the other day. You should run the ball 20 to 30 times a game instead of letting him throw the ball as much as he did. I don't think we'll see the stat line from Phillip Rivers again, and if we do, Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter the following week.
All right, number 29, Baker Mayfield, 21 for 39, 189, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The one thing that I will say here is I think the Baltimore Ravens are a significantly better team than Baltimore or than Cleveland. So I'm not going to read a whole hell of a lot into this because I don't think Baker Mayfield had much of a chance here. But I think the more we see this, those last 8 games 2 years ago were against bad football teams. And what we saw last year, what we see at the start of this year, I think as good as it gets for Baker is those commercials.
Yeah, really, he hasn't shown us anything in, 2 years now? It's been a while since we've seen Baker Mayfield go out and play a good football game. So that's why I had him at 26 in the preseason ranks. That's why I have him at 29 after week 1. He hasn't been a good football player recently.
All right, number 30, Dwayne Haskins, 17 for 31, 178, and a touchdown. He's an all right player. I would say this may sound crazy, but they need a game manager at quarterback. With that defensive front, I think that defensive line can keep them in games. If Alex Smith is healthy, I think Alex Smith's the best chance to win some games here, and 7 or 8 could win the NFC East.
Yeah, no, I think if Alex Smith, he is on the active roster, which means they probably think he could play at some point. I would put him in if he's healthy because they have a chance. Really, they're up in the division. They're the only team with a win, I think, in that division at the moment. And it's a weak schedule. It's a weak division in general. Give them a chance. They have a shot, but they need to go out there and need to have a quarterback who can manage the game, not turn the ball over, and just make throws when they need him to. I don't know if Dwayne Haskins is that guy yet.
All right, number 31, Tyrod Taylor, who was, I guess, what Tyrod Taylor is, which is average. And he did enough to win the game, but the Chargers are in trouble with Taylor. The only problem is I think Taylor's probably better than Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I would agree there. I think Taylor's probably the best shot of them winning But we'll see Justin Herbert probably like week 6 or 7 because the team will just get tired of losing with Taylor, and they'll put Herbert out there, and he'll do even worse.
All right, number 32, Ryan Fitzpatrick. I still don't know why we don't see Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We talked about their lack of a preseason. I don't understand it necessarily either. I think if you're going to invest a high pick into Tua, put him on the football field. And we should see him by week 2 or week 3. We need to see him sooner rather than later because otherwise this could be a lost season for Miami. You don't gain anything from having Fitzpatrick out there.
No, you don't. And, he will have that one game here in the next couple of weeks where he throws 4 touchdown passes. But the rest of it's just going to be a mess. Any NFL news you want to talk about today?
I think we covered almost everything we want to talk about. I think there's not really – well, Pittsburgh has a couple of injuries. Of course, Zach Banner, tackle, has gone down. He's torn an ACL from the sounds of it. So Pittsburgh's offensive line, it's going to be a mess the entire season. It seems like there's already been a number of injuries. So, I mean, that will affect Big Ben, I think, more because he's not going to be as mobile as he ever was. So maybe something to look forward to in the future. Pittsburgh's offensive line not looking too good.
All right, the Bengals did claim former Browns kicker Austin Seibert ahead of the Thursday night football Titanic struggle, the Battle of Ohio, the Bengals and the Browns, which the Bengals will probably win by 50 points. Don't you think, Sam?
Hey, of course, Joe Burrow's going to go out there and win the MVP in one game, right?
He might. He really might. I'm hoping. I'm not going to hold my breath, though. All right, Sam. Tomorrow, you will be back at 1 o'clock. I may not be back with you, but you will be here at 1 o'clock tomorrow to talk about something. And we're here every Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock to talk about something NFL related. You can follow Sam Teets at SamTeets33. You can follow me at Grueling Truth. You can hear all of our podcasts, read all the articles, including Sam's quarterback rankings, which came out this morning on thegruelingtruth.com. You can hear the podcast version on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, over 300 different platforms. You can watch the video version live every day at 1 o'clock Eastern on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitch, Periscope. And there's a place in India now that shows our podcast, Sam, I can't pronounce. So we're big in India. I think if we do a show in India and it gets a certain amount of viewers, that we get to own a 7-Eleven. But I'm not sure. All right. Anything before we wrap it up, Sam?
No, I think we covered just about everything. I think my topic for tomorrow will probably be going through one overreaction for every team in the NFL just based on week 1. It's a little fun topic you can just throw out there, and I'll put together real quick. So we'll have that for tomorrow. I don't know if you'll be here. I'll try to have a guest on, but we'll see how that goes.
All right, guys. We are going to go ahead and wrap it up for now. Make sure you check out Replenishing Care and Technologies, rcandt.com. But for now, for Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening and watching The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.